Well, just on this visit, we heard the president talk about, you know, his commitment to prison reforms. Now, a lot of people will say this is not the first time we've heard that. This is not the first time that, you know, a president will say that they're committed to prison reforms. In your experience, you have monitored what goes on in the prison system for quite a while. What do you think is the gap between the words that, you know, public office holders mouth and the execution?
I would like to begin with commending Mr. President as compared to the past president. Mr. President, I think in August this year, said what no president has ever said before. He said that prison congestion in Nigeria is a national scandal. That for me is a huge acknowledgement. And in fact, when I wrote him a letter 2 days ago on Human Rights Day, you know, bringing again the prison issue to his attention, I commended him for that. That is very important. But also, I listened to him, I think 2 weeks ago, he was addressing the Judges Conference in Abuja, and he said also that he has written letters to all the state governors in the 36 states to decongest the prisons. So I would commend him for taking those initiatives. And in fact, in my letter to him, I also say that his release of 500 people in Kano prison, which we just saw, has created that model for those governors to follow. But largely, that is on the side of Mr. President. Mr. President cannot do all. He's taking his own initiative, his own effort. But a lot needs to be done that he cannot do. And that is where there's a lot of gaps. So from what you have enumerated, you seem to see the political will. Is that what you're saying? I would say yes and no. On the part of Mr. President, I would say yes. On the part of the Minister of Justice, on the part of the judiciary, and on the part of the prison, I will be hesitant to say yes.
We'll come to that shortly, because we know that the Minister of Justice, who's also the Attorney General of the Federation, has also spoken on the state of prisons, but we'll come to that shortly. Let's talk about the problems facing prison, the prison system. We know that awaiting trial inmates are sometimes said to be 80% of those who, you know, occupy the prisons. Do you see that synergy between the executive arm of government and the judiciary to be able to solve that problem? Because we understand that those two arms must collaborate to be able to ensure that the number of awaiting trial inmates are drastically reduced.
In fact, one of the lacking of the problem is lack of synergy between the arms of government in the criminal justice system, namely the judiciary and the police. That synergy is lacking, and it's one of the major problems that we have observed and we have constantly pointed out to them, but that synergy is still lacking.
I'm very worried. I mean, listening to the testimony of one of the inmates there who was allowed to speak, that he's been in prison 14 years over the theft of transistor radio, or alleged theft of a transistor radio. I mean, I imagine that even if you were to be convicted for the theft of that transistor radio, it cannot be 14 years he'll be serving.
Well, that is precisely the issue, that we have people in our prison system who shouldn't be there, who should have been there for 1 week, for 2 weeks, spending 14 years, 13 years, some 10 years awaiting trial, just as you have seen in that video. And there are thousands of them. And one of the issues is that these people do not have access to the media like you to tell their stories. And in fact, so maybe I'm preempting you, but one of the things that I will be saying on this program that I'm calling for is that the media should be given access to people in prison. Let these people have access to the media so that they can tell their stories. It is time that Nigerians hear the stories of people in prison. It is only those stories. I have never been in prison. I am not a prisoner. So whatever I tell you about people in prison, if I told you that someone has been waiting trial in that prison for 14 years over a radio, you might doubt me. But that is somebody telling you their story. And if these people have more access to the media to tell their stories, these stories will certainly move the country to take action. But in a situation where they don't have access to the media, their stories are not told, and no one knows what is happening to them. And that is one of the things that I would recommend.
Only recently, you did a research, your organization did a research on the state of women prisons in the country. Is that right?
Yes.
And then you concluded your studies in the southern part of the country. I mean, you had done the northern part before now, and you focused on the southern part. First and foremost, how fundamentally different would you say that prisons in the north are from the south?
The prisons in the north are older, and as you can see in that picture, I don't think you can see any prison in the south that looks like that. That is one fundamental difference. But one thing that cut across is that all the prisons are overcrowded, and all the conditions, apart from maybe the physical infrastructure that may look different, all other conditions remain the same. The study you refer to, the findings both in the north and in the south were the same. Female inmates do not have access to simple things like pads, sanitary pads. They rely on churches and charities to help with that. The children who are staying in those prisons with them, some of whom are either born there or came into those prisons with them, also do not have access to anything. They eat the same food that those children eat, that serve their mothers, and that cuts across north and south. Which
is one of the fundamental differences between the female prison and the male prison. You most likely oftentimes find children staying with their mothers or pregnant women in prison. I'm just wondering, in this situation where you see women and children, mothers and their babies staying together in prison, whose rights are being violated? Are we violating the rights of the children?
We are. Those children did not commit any crime. Their mothers may have committed crimes or alleged to have committed crime, but those children did not commit those crimes.
But won't we be violating the rights of the babies if we forcefully take them away from their mothers? Don't they have a right to motherly care?
Well, yeah, they do, but at a certain age, look, we're not even talking about taking them out if they haven't reached that age. But what are we doing for them while they are there? Some of them from that research, for example, do not even have access to immunization or limited access to immunization. I just told you that the report said they eat the food that their mothers eat. They don't have blankets. They lack everything. So even if these children are too small to be taken out of the prison, let them be catered for. What about education? You know, my child, as small as she's less than 2 years, she's receiving some form of education. So those kind of programs can be introduced for these children while they are still in prison, why they cannot be taken out. But as soon as they reach the age that they should be taken out, and someone should be responsible for taking care of that child.
Are you saying
but also, most importantly, we need to reduce the number of women that come in contact with the criminal justice system, especially women who are pregnant and nursing mothers. This is why we have laws.
Are you saying then that if they commit offenses, they should be spared?
A lot of things can be done. One is, this is what is done in other places, suspended sentences can be given until the mother wins the baby. And that mother is tried and convicted.
I'll let you finish your thoughts because we have to take a moment now. When we return, the Attorney General has spoken about plans to decongest the prisons within 2 years. How feasible is this plan? In a moment, please stay with us.